What world? Jeanette Edmead here. Again, the heart and soul behind High Priestess Gran Canaria. Today is, today's Sunday the 14th of March. It's International Women's Month, which means whatever it is to you, whatever that means to you. And we continue with our Q&A sessions, our live sessions, getting to know the team, the High Priestess Gran Canaria team, before we go on retreat together, so you can get a feel for who we are, what we are about, what we do, what we're offering. You can ask us any questions that you'd like to ask us. And so next week we will be in conversation with Natalie, our capoeira specialist, and she's dying to speak to you guys and get to know you guys, for you guys to get to know her. And today we've got our clinical therapist in the house, ready and waiting to talk about what it means to be a clinical therapist and why High Priestess Gran Canaria. So without further ado, let's bring in our Ariel. Let's bring in our Ariel. I need to remember how to do this again, to bring in guests. I can't remember how to do it. There we go. I've just done it. And Ariel should be with us any second now. Hey, Ariel.
Oh, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Excellent. So you've got the hair done. I'm liking it. Looks good.
Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you.
What's the weather like where you are?
It's kind of cold. But we've got a lot of sun, which is really good because normally we don't see a lot of sun at this time. So that's been really refreshing to have to have sun.
The daylight. Yeah, a bit of vitamin D, which
Exactly.
you can get out into and just kind of feel alive a little bit, as opposed to all the crap and then dark days as well.
Yep. Really.
Yeah, my pets were like that today. They wanted to be in front of the camera, so they wanted to steal the limelight.
Yeah, they hear me talking to someone and he's like, I want it.
My Dora was like that earlier on today. I was like, okay, Dora, it's all yours.
Yeah.
So let's get down to business, Ariel. You are in the States, and maybe it means, so just talk a little bit about your background, what your qualifications are, and what led you to your qualifications, if you can.
Yeah, no
Let's go
problem.
there.
I have a master's in social work. Gosh, I started this journey honestly, like looking back at my life, I've loved working with people, helping people, specifically kids. I started working as like a camp counselor in high school, and I remember just absolutely loving it. I went off to get my bachelor's degree, and immediately after graduating, I started working for like a 24/7 residential home for foster kids. Loved the work, but I knew I wanted to be a little bit more involved with like therapy. And so after that job, I decided like I would probably go back and get my master's because I wanted to do something therapist wise, but I didn't really know how I was going to do that. I looked into a lot of different ways, being a clinical like nurse practitioner, um, psychology, psychiatry, like all these different routes. And I chose social work specifically because I love that it takes the environment, and it also takes like the person as a whole. So it looks at the person in multiple different ways. So we don't just study the brain. It's not just psychology. We don't just study, the actions or the behaviors of someone. It's more so, why do people do what they do based off of, where they grew up, where they live. There's the societal norms, which is different per country. So there's all these different things that really influence people. So that's really what got me into this field in general. And after I got my master's, I started working for a private practice. Absolutely fell in love with it. Didn't work with children as much, although I do still have some children, but I'm really loving working with adults. I love working with couples too, which is kind of weird. Um, it's not weird, but it's just I was thrown into it and I was
But
like, I don't think I'm gonna like this. And then I ended up loving it, um, which was really, really cool for me. So yeah, I also got my yoga certification, or I'm like in process of getting it. I still have to do like the homework piece, but that was really interesting too because that takes the holistic approach, which I'm super into. So the mindfulness and being present and aware of the current moment, and I really like to tie that into my clinical practice too, which I think everyone really enjoys, especially once you get to a certain age and you're really able to understand what it means to be mindful and how often we aren't mindful. And take that into an everyday perspective. It's really, really interesting. I remember I was, when we had snow like a week ago, um, outside with my dog and my kid, and I may have fallen. My kid probably pushed me over, and I was just in the snow, and I was just laying there, and I was like, I'm gonna take this moment to be mindful. And I just remember like sitting back and like looking at the sky, and I was like, wow, like the sky looks the same in the winter months as it does in the summer. Like I just have never really like laid down and sat and looked at the sky like this. And the
enjoyed the moment as opposed to going, ah!
exactly. So yeah, so that was really interesting for me. I think that the cool thing with clinical therapy too is like I can bring a lot of my own personal experiences, like that story, for example. I can bring that into a therapy session with a client, and it brings another level of awareness with that one-on-one connection with my clients as well, which I think is really, really cool. And it allows them to see me as a human as well, which I think a lot of people need, especially when we're dealing with like mental health. um,
So thank you, that's incredible. So you've worked with all age groups, children, couples, adults, and loved and enjoyed working with all of these different group sets and age groups, which is incredible. Our retreats, as you know, with High Priestess Gran Canaria for women, maybe in the future we'll do something with families. That is a goal, but at the minute, let's focus on the job in hand, the task in hand. Why would you say it's important that we create these spaces, these safe spaces for Black women? Why do you think it's important?
I think it's important for a lot of reasons. As everyone is probably familiar, a lot of the social issues and
Say
people.
it as it is. Don't be afraid. I know you're thinking probably I'm a professional and I have to hold my tongue and I can't say certain things because of my job. And I appreciate that, but this is where we keep it real. This is where we keep it real. And if you're allowed to professionally say what you want to, say what it is that's there. Don't hold back, please. Not on my account, but I understand you've got other roles to fulfill and bills to pay.
Yeah. The secret anymore. I think that's kind of the awesome thing about it, is that we are finally stepping into this role in society where the Black community is able to speak and use our voices, to talk about things that we really haven't talked about before. And it gives us a lot of power, but at the same time it gives us a lot of uncomfortability, and that's scary. It's really scary to be uncomfortable, and so we need people to have our backs. We need people to support us, to love us, to know that like we're not alone. And a lot of the things that we're suffering and going through right now, a lot of people in our life, a lot of people in our society have already been there, done that. So it's really good to have that support, to know that you're not alone. And that's really what I think we need. And then Black women in itself, I mean, I think we have held this role. We've we've held down our men, other men, other women, like people, and everything in our countries, like we have been like a source of life for a lot of people, and I don't think we've really been able to ever speak and use our voices. So this is a really powerful time, but like I said too, it's uncomfortable. So it's really important that we are there to support each other, to uplift and to empower each other. um, and I mean, I think now more than ever is when we need other fellow, women of color to be there to support us, to love us, to show us that it's okay to speak up and use our voices. Because in the event that, you fall, you're not going to be alone. You're going to have someone else to be there to uplift you and to bring you back. Like, Rock bottom isn't even anything to be scared of anymore, because we've seen so many people thrive from rock bottom. And you do that with support. You do that with mental health. You do that with a variety of different things. So I think that's one of the main reasons, especially with, working with Black women in the mental health field.
Thank you. I'm just going to interject there. I've got another question, and I'll hold on to that question in a moment. But the last time I went to see my clinical psychiatrist here that I see in Gran Canaria, who is a white woman who's lovely, but I walked away feeling like she just didn't get it. She just looked at me like I was a loon. And I felt like she was missing the points that you made, in terms of that kind of reference of understanding of that connection. And she's a great psychiatrist, and I'm better than I was, but I know that I still walked away like, shit, she just doesn't get it. And that's not a great feeling. And like, do I go back? It's what I've got here, and it's free, provided by the government, but it's what I've got here. So maybe that's an opportunity for you when you come to this side of the world. That's what I want to say there.
Yeah. And I think that's really, you bring up a really good point, is that I think a lot of minorities, they don't feel like they have someone who they can connect with. And that vibe that you get from someone.
We're not minorities. We're not minorities. We are the majority of the world, sister. Sorry, we're not minorities. We are the majority of the world in terms of people of color.
Thank you for the correction. Yes. Well, we often don't vibe with people, especially with mental health professionals, because a lot of them aren't the same color. They don't understand what we're going through. They're not able to see things or feel them on that level that we need, right? And that's part of that vibe that we need and that we crave, right? That's like an innate characteristic. So to be able to meet with someone and to share some of your deepest, darkest secrets, and to open up about things that maybe you wouldn't with other people on a normal basis, that's a very vulnerable place to be. And for you to not have that energy, that connection, that level of understanding with someone, it's really hard to continue to move forward. And I think you bring up a really good point in that, like, you were better with your psychiatrist than you were before, but there's still
like the gap. Yeah, there's still a huge gap, in terms of just her seeing me as an actual human being, as a real person. What I'm saying is tangible. It's not all Fruit Loops and fairies, what I'm saying to her. But that's kind of how I walked away. And so I'm grateful to have it, the support network. I've talked about it to you before, and I've talked about it publicly. I'm on Prozac, and I feel a hell of a lot better for being on that antidepressant. I previously was on sertraline, and that didn't work for me in terms of my mental health issues. And I have no problem in talking about them. But as a Black woman of 45, I've fucking suffered long enough to get to this point where I'm like, hey, I've suffered long enough. I don't want to continue suffering. It's time to sort shit out. And the support that's available is limited. And then when you're in countries where the support that's available doesn't look like you, it's even more limited. So a couple of questions have just come through. Do you think they act as though they don't get it? So you'll come back, so you'll continue to come back? I'm just going to answer that question from my perspective, but I want you to answer that question as well. So I see a clinical psychiatrist, and the service that I receive is free, and it's free on the public sector here in Gran Canaria, which is where I live. So it's great, the fact that it's free, because in the UK, that shit is like gold dust. It's really, really hard to come by. It's hard to be referred. You'll be referred, but you'll be referred to like people on a very low level, not a clinical psychiatrist, in the UK. So in Spain, I see a clinical psychiatrist. My issue with that is, one, I don't feel that she gets me 100%. And two, because it's free, it's the public sector, I don't get to see her often enough. So if I see my clinical psychiatrist, it's like the last time I saw her was back in November. And the next appointment is this month or next month. So there's like a 6-month gap. So the next time I see it, because it's free. But that's been my issue, because I've had to cancel appointments and stuff because of other things. But that's answering that question from my perspective. I see a clinical psychiatrist here in Spain for free. So I think she's doing the job that she can do, that she knows how to do, but she doesn't have the experience in the wider world to be able to see more of me as a human being, as a whole being, and kind of deal with things holistically. And because it's free, the sessions aren't consistent enough for her to be able to give me enough of what it is that I need. That's my perspective on that question. Can you answer that question, please, from your perspective?
Hey, that's a great question. That's my auntie. um, that's a really good question because I think too the thing to highlight here is that the mental health community is like this big. So a lot of us are really overwhelmed, especially with everything that's going on right now. The pandemic has caused a lot of different mental health
Yeah.
concerns. So yes, I think part of it is like, okay, we want you to keep coming back. We want you to keep coming back. But then personally, I mean, and I speak for many, but more so for myself, I do a lot of research in between my clients trying to figure out like, what did I miss? What went wrong? What can I do? I felt a disconnect, and I think most therapists I think are probably very empathetic, so they can probably feel when they're not vibing with their client. At least I know I can. So then I go back and I study like, what do I have to do to get here? So sometimes too that like we may not get it, but like I'm gonna try to understand, and then I want to come back to see if we can kind of conquer this, right? And I like to keep a very open, like clinical relationship. Like, tell me if you think I'm crazy, if you think what we're talking about I'm not getting, like tell me, because I think that speaks to your power too, right? Like you are here for a reason, for a purpose, and I want you to get everything that you want from me. So if you don't feel like we're vibing or connecting, I want you to be able to say, hey, Ariel, like, I don't think that this is working for me. Maybe it's mindfulness. Maybe mindfulness is not the thing for me. I can't really do this right now. I don't know what it is. And it's like, okay, cool. We can kind of work with that and move forward. Um, so that was just kind of like a subset of that question. But I do think a lot of the time it is I mean, I think it's hard, especially if you're seeing a client like with a 6-month gap. That's insane. I can imagine the word vomit that comes from.
Exactly. Okay, time out next.
Yeah.
Because it's free, because it's a free service as well. So she's doing her job, and then she finishes. I wanted to kind of, I don't know whether you've finished answering that question, and we've got another question in the chat as well. But I think, is that because you're newer to your practice than maybe an established person who might have been doing the same thing for like 10, 15 years, that you're still hungry to perfect your craft and your skill and to find out more and to connect with your clients? And so you haven't become jaded by the system, by the stories, by the jobs, and just
That's an amazing. I get a lot from a lot of people. They're like, if you're gonna get a new therapist or psychiatrist or something, go with someone who just graduated, right? Like they're really in like their studies. I don't know what it's like for other like fields, psychiatry, sociology, counseling. Like I don't really know what it's like for them. But for social work, we have to do a lot of continuing education. And I'm actually really excited. I'm right now just have my master's, and every time I finish a degree, I'm like, okay, I'm never going back. And then I finish a degree, and I'm like, oh. But
oh, another one.
I love to learn. I think that's my thing. So I might be okay with a master's degree if I can continue continuing education because I want to continue learning. We've noticed our society is adapting. We are growing. Research is happening that's never happened before. We're learning new things about people, cultures, experiences, right? We've got all these new things. So it doesn't make sense to me whether I'm here now just out of my master's degree within a couple of years or 20 years down the line. I want to continue learning. So I'm going to continue practicing and doing things so that I'm always up to par on like the new information. So I personally hope that I never get jaded by the system. I do admit that I am fairly new to it, but that's something that I'm very aware of, and I'm actively always going to be trying to effectively change and make sure that I'm adapting with society because we're forever going to be doing research on new things.
I just implore that I hope that you do continue with that mindset, because as a teacher by profession, people become jaded in their careers, and you become it gets easier to be on autopilot,
Yeah.
whatever it is that we do. So just remember this conversation in 10 years time, in 20 years time, in 30 years time. There's a lot to get through here, and we've got another question. So I just want to be respectful of the time, of your time. Why are Black people so standoffish on therapy? I don't know what the on therapy or in therapy. I'm not quite sure whether I understand that question. So that's over to you if you understand that question.
Yeah, probably why, and I guess Tiffany, correct me if I'm incorrect, but why are Black people not willing maybe to see therapists, or, their therapy is frowned upon? Um, my, if that answer, or if that question is correct, I'll go on and kind of answer it. I think that comes from a lot of things. I think it comes from, society. We have been expected to be strong and, take everything in, right? Like you can pile all the crap on us, right? And we're fine. We'll thrive. We'll continue. But we've never paid attention to this piece, right? We've never even been given the ability or the opportunity to pay attention to this piece, right? We were just, this was a,
The space, the time, and the money. The space, the time, and the money. There's a whole lot missing from that.
yeah. And so, and I'm not really sure what it's like in other countries, but here, our healthcare isn't free. So it's a lot of money to see a therapist. It's a lot of money, especially if you don't have insurance yourself. Even if you do, sometimes it's still really expensive. So that's probably an issue too. And then you don't see therapists catering to communities where you see most brown and black people. And that's unfortunate, right? And then I think at the same time too, kind of like your experience is that we get connected with these people who we don't vibe with, you don't understand where I'm coming from. Like how
And vice versa, who maybe don't vibe with us. It's not just a one-way street.
not at all.
So sorry, just interject there, continue.
Yeah, that vibe I'm feeling from you is not only because of me, but yeah, because of you, right? Like that's why I like emphasize that relationship, that clinical relationship that you have to have with your client, because it does go both ways, right? You want them to open up to you, right? You want to be able to kind of share things that make you a human too. I think that's one of the reasons why I connect so well with my clients. I'm able to share some of those feelings or experiences that I had that's like, okay, well, this is me being mindful today. And I feel like a lot of maybe not a lot, but I think sometimes it's hit or miss with the therapist, what they'll share with you, what they won't, right? I think a lot of times it's, you come into my office and I'm this professional person and I can't share anything, with you, but that's not how I am. So I think that helps a lot too with that kind of vibe. So that's kind of my perspective on it.
Okay, so exactly is the answer to that. I'm just going to kind of add to that. So from a Black British perspective, I'm Black, I'm British, and I'm from the Caribbean descent. In Caribbean communities and in the British community, in the English community in particular, we have the stiff upper lip. We have the kind of we don't talk our business. We don't put our business out there. We don't let people know what's going on in the Caribbean business. So I come from the worst of the both, the worst. So it's not like the American kind of, we talk everything, we say everything, we put everything out there in terms of kind of being able and it's okay to talk about what's going on. In the Caribbean community, people don't talk about shit. People, it's frowned upon to talk about any kind of pain, any kind of suffering, any kind of, apart from maybe like social injustices, but in terms of mental health and all the rest of it in Caribbean community, we don't talk about that shit. And in the British community, that's only becoming okay to talk about that shit now. And then like anything, we have like the church and all the rest of it that plays a huge part in our communities as well. And so in the UK, that's kind of starting for people to start to talk about it, really because of what's gone on this year. It's given the space for people to say, I've been suffering with mental health just because of the pandemic. I've been suffering from mental health problems fucking way before the pandemic. The pandemic is like giving me the time to sort shit out. The pandemic for me was just like a continuation of shit. But the point that I'm making is that we've been suffering in different ways for quite a long time, and the culture in which I come from, both the British stiff upper lip and the Caribbean stiff upper lip extra shut up, don't talk about anything. They're two kind of places and spaces that it's not okay to talk about what's going on here, what's going on in the heart, what's going on in the pocket, what's going on anywhere. We talk about other things and we might, laugh about other things, but we don't talk about the real deal. So forget about that. People are talking shit. Sorry, sis. You know that because I keep it real. So let's get back to our retreats. I know that you're looking forward to being on retreat in Spain because I don't think you've kind of ventured much over this side of the world. And then what would our retreats look like? What, for example, if you can talk about a Monday to Friday, the retreats aren't Monday to Friday, but a Monday to Friday, what kind of things would we do and what would people walk away from the retreats with?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I definitely want to incorporate a little bit of yoga. I think that's going to be, that's going to bring my mindfulness piece, I think, to the retreat piece. and I'm really going to focus more on like the mindfulness and the yoga, right? Like I want to set an intention before, getting into that space. And I want to do that daily because I think I really want to help people see the therapeutic influence that it has on your mental capacity. Even just doing 5 minutes of it, I think it can really help a lot. And so I think it'll be really good to kind of talk about what it was like the first day. Was it really hard? Was it difficult? Was your mind wandering? What did that look like for you? And then moving over to, kind of the last day of the retreat, and was it any easier? It's like, yeah, okay, this is something that we only did for a couple of days, but still, were you able to see differences, right? I'm all about recognizing our progress and our growth, because I think that's really when we start to feel really proud of ourselves. So that's one thing that I'm going to definitely love to include. Another thing is, and I think I'm going to keep kind of an open mind for sure with these retreats, because I really want everyone to get what they want from it. But I think a lot of like group space talk, and then also what I like to call like the coping skill tool belt. I'm gonna give a lot of information about different coping skills for different types of things. So depression, anxiety, insomnia, communication, relationships. Like there's a lot of different things that affect us and our mental health on a daily basis that I don't think we recognize. And learning how to conquer it within ourselves can help in like lots of different ways. So I want to talk a lot about different coping skills that we can put into our tool belt, and I think that'll be really helpful. Like I said earlier too, sometimes clients will come to me and say, Ariel, the mindfulness isn't really working for me. And it's like, okay, that's fine. This is just a tool that we're going to put in your tool belt. Like if you're working on a house and you're working on one thing specifically one day, you might pull out your tools from your tool belt from the left side and work consistently that day on that, but maybe next week you start working on a different part of the house and you bring your tools from your tool belt on the right side, right? We didn't need it last week, but we need it this week. It's the same thing kind of with our coping strategies and coping mechanisms for mental health. You may not use them in that moment, but it's good to have them in case something happens, right? We're ever changing. We're always adapting and moving and growing, so things are going to change too. So really having a safe space to kind of talk about different coping strategies, learn more about that. And then also, I think just like a safe space to share, like we had mentioned earlier, you said like our communities, we don't talk about things, right? We don't feel comfortable talking. We don't talk. People don't listen. Like all of these, things are incorporated into how we deal with our mental health. So having that safe space too, to just talk about things and hear other people's perspectives, I think is going to be really, really big. And I'm hoping that like everyone else will be able to mesh well together, and that safe space will be something that we've never really experienced before, and that's something that they can really take away and walk away knowing that they've opened up and they've shared. I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you've like talked about something and it's like, oh, like I feel so much better, right? Like my shoulders, they feel so much better. Like I just in general feel so much better just because I talked out loud and I felt heard, right? That's another key piece, is to feel heard. And so I'm hoping that that's something that we can explore too in the mental health retreats.
I think just to add that, for me, it's about feeling understood. So heard, seen, and understood. So when you're in a space with like-minded people who might have experienced similar things, not the same things, because we're all different and we're coming from different backgrounds and experiences, but they understand what it is that you're talking about. You're not sitting and talking to people feeling like you're an alien and they're looking at you like you've got three heads. So you're in a space with people who resemble you, who understand maybe the macro and microaggressions that you might be experiencing and talking about, and how you've had to deal with them, what coping strategies you've had to implement. And then you're not the only one, because that's also a big thing, feeling like you're the only one going through whatever it is that you're going through. We're neither the first nor the last of anything, but we need to have that support network in place and feel like we're connecting with people. Those things are huge for me. I just kind of want to ask you two more questions. So why High Priestess Gran Canaria? Why did you want to be part of this project?
Because you're amazing.
I'm not interested in flattery. I can do that all by myself. Go, what else?
And that's really a big piece, is when I met you, you were so about empowering women. And I feel like that's something that we don't come across a lot. And I really want it to be a part of a community, a group of women who want it to empower other women. And it's hard, right? Like it's hard. And I think too, I love that you were open and able to connect with me from a different country. And that like really vibed well with me. So you are amazing. But then I think your ideas, you had mentioned too, that like you love traveling. That's something that I've really come into over the last couple of years. And so I continue to travel. And you had mentioned too that when you went different places, you would look for other groups of women who you could uplift, but who could also uplift you. And you said you had trouble with it. And it's like, well, why am I searching? Like, why don't I just bring that community to me? And that was so enlightening to me for you to, want that, crave that, not find it, and still, be able to do something on your own to make that happen. So I thought that was really, really great. And I love that it takes everyone, right? There's people from different countries. And then that like uplifting and empowering women, that was a really, really key piece for me. But then also, dealing with our community, that's another huge thing too. There's been multiple times where I work with people of color. And at the end of our intake session, they'll say, I'm so glad that I matched with you. Like this was such a relief. Like I really had a lot of doubts going into this, but I feel like you understand things on a level that maybe other people couldn't. And that in itself, and sometimes it's like, oh, like I know that's really just because of the way I look, but I'm so glad I could do that and be there for someone in that capacity, and I think it's sad that, that happens so often, right? Especially with people in our community. And so I just
who need it the most, probably, who've experienced the most and need it the most and are suffering the most and get what we need the least.
Yeah. So that's my purpose, and that's what, High Priestess purpose is as well. So we mesh really well together, and I just want to continue that.
Okay, thank you. I think from me, I don't have any more questions for you. Is there anything else that you'd like to say that I haven't asked you? Anything else that you'd like to add before we finish today?
I don't think so. I think it was a really good session. I really love the questions. Yeah, I mean, team women, like.
Excellent, excellent. So we're looking forward to having you over on this side of the water, this side of the pond, and getting those retreats and creating those safe spaces for Black High Priestesses, which I've needed all of my motherfucking life, and I still need them. And I still continue to create them in any way that I can, but it's hard for a number of different reasons. But we need them more than ever before. And so that's what our High Priestess Gran Canaria mental health retreats are about, those safe spaces. Yes, we have to pay for it. It's a business, but it's about creating safe spaces. And hopefully you'll find like-minded people and you'll be able to go away and build a support network. Who knows? But hopefully we can service the community because it's needed more than ever, and the last 12 months have shown how much it's needed. And I hope that people can take the time out of their busy worlds and busy lives to come and join us on retreat here in Gran Canaria in the sunshine.
Yes, lots of sun.
So, and it'll be really warm as well, so that's the great thing. And then we can go to the beach, we can go to the sand dunes, and maybe go in the freezing cold water. I won't be. I'll be watching you guys do that. I'm all about the Caribbean Sea there. Anyway, enough about me. Thank you very much, Ariel, for your time this afternoon and your energy in answering those questions so beautifully. So look after yourself, take care, and over and out from me.
All right. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye. Hasta luego.